Well, thank you, Lisa and Elisa, for having me here this evening. And good evening to all of you in New York. It's such a pleasure to be part of this gathering of truly amazing women. Blog Her is a groundbreaking organization, and its impact is really a credit to all of you. I think, the internet has proven, and you've proven, that it's almost an unimaginably powerful tool. And yet the internet also in some ways is still a relatively new tool. We're the first generation to live with this technology as part of our daily lives, which means we're also the first generation to grapple with the question of really how should it be used. And that's why I'm so impressed with the Blog Her community, because you've made this decision to use the tool to create a better and more equal world. You're using the power of connectivity to ensure that women's stories, including your own, are always part of the conversation. And guess what? When women have a voice, they use it to do remarkable things. So it's easy to think sometimes that the most important decision about the world's future are made in places like the White House or the United Nations, and they do make some pretty important decisions. But I think a lot of the most important decisions are the ones that really change the world. Those decisions are made in places that sometimes you might not expect. And I'm talking about the decisions made by women in remote villages and in urban slums, women who, despite the odds being stacked against them, are determined to improve lives for themselves and for their families and their communities. And the data shows now that when women have a voice in their health, the ripple effects of that impact their children too. And when women have a voice in their families, they use it to prioritize things like healthcare, nutritious food for the children, and education. Those are all the building blocks of a strong future. So one of the best parts of my job these days is getting to meet the women behind these statistics. Women like Veronica Harajin, she's a farmer in northeastern India, whose mango and watermelon crops are helping lift up 3 generations of her family out of poverty. Or a woman like Sally Kuchawa, whom I just met a few weeks ago when I was in Malawi. Sally is a midwife. She's the only one of her family's 8 children to follow her father into medicine. Now, Malawi's maternal mortality rate is one of the highest in the world. Almost everyone I met in Malawi on this trip knew a woman who had died in pregnancy or delivery. But Sally was that woman who refused to accept the status quo. One day, after watching yet another delivery end in death, she decided that she couldn't bear to see another woman lose their life. And so what did she do? She marched straight into the Ministry of Health and she said, someone has to speak up for these voiceless mothers. And so Sally's visit to the ministry led to a new career for her. And today, she's training community midwives to help save the lives of more and more women. And what I've learned over the years from women like Veronica and Sally is that we all have an obligation to use our voices for our own empowerment and on behalf of others. And that's where you come in. You've created a platform that amplifies your own stories and the stories of women everywhere. And you're using technology to its highest purpose. Most importantly, a purpose that's deepening our connections to one another across the globe. So you've introduced us to women we might not otherwise have met, like the women in Zanzibar who are becoming solar engineers to bring electricity to their community, or the women that you highlighted who are the mermaids of South Korea, who support their families by deep sea diving off the coast of Jeju Island. Those are women I would have never otherwise heard about. And so they're not these women who normally appear in the headlines, but they're doing that quiet work of changing the world. And when we all learn about the lives they live and the challenges they face, we can better understand how to rally our voices behind them. The stories told by women's lives in the Blog Her community aren't just the stories that move us, they're the stories that move the world in the right direction. Those stories educate us, they inspire us, And more importantly, they motivate us to act. And that's why Women's Lives is so much more than just a hashtag. It's really a path forward. When I was a child, my mom used to say to me, especially as a girl, set your own agenda, or someone else is going to set it for you. Well, by giving voice to women and girls all over the world, you're insisting that women and girls have a place on the world's agenda. So thank you for all your fantastic work. I can't wait to see what comes next.
Thank you. Thank you, MelindaGates. And welcome to Blog Her 15. This is Lisa Stone. I know we can't see each other. I wanted to ask you a question from one of the women who participated in the Women's Lives Initiative, Jennifer Mason Wolf. She's also a teacher, and she asked, what experiences have you had in helping harness or watching people harness the storytelling capabilities of the next generation of children in any of your work?
Well, I think the children in this work are already inherently amazing storytellers, and in some ways they haven't grown into adulthood where we have these layers upon layers that we think we have to tell all the data to get our message and our story out. Kids naturally tell stories. It's how they learn, and it's how we pass on to our children what we want them to learn. The first thing we do, honestly, is read stories or tell stories to the next generation. So allowing them to use the latest tools to collect stories, whether that's them starting to blog themselves or being on social media. What I'm finding with the kids of the next generation is they're not only powerful storytellers narratively, but they learn how to put photos in and videos in and really make a story come alive. So I love seeing what kids are doing in this next generation with the tools that we're all using now. And to me, they're some of the most inspiring storytellers. And I can't wait to see where they're going to go as they grow into teens and later as adults, and then the generation comes behind them.
Melinda, thank you. Really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you.